Hey, I'm Tom Sinclair, your chief streaming idiot. We had so much fun in the pre-show. You got to show up for these pre-shows. I mean, it just that's where it's sometimes that's where the good stuff is. But we're coming to you live Wednesday afternoon, June 3rd, 2015, from our studios, Eastern Shore Broadcasting, Fairhope, Alabama. If you're watching us on YouTube, hey, thanks for watching us on YouTube. I'm honored. Thank you. Subscribe and you'll be able to get notices when we have equally idiotic shows published. So we'd love to have you do it, but we'd also love to have you come on Wednesdays live because I think you'd really enjoy it. One of the things that we were talking about, we were talking about a bunch of stuff in the pre-show and wanted to roll into some of that here in just a second. But let's do a little business first. Full disclosure, I'm an authorized reseller for VidBlaster and for vMix, great live video production software, and also design and build custom PCs for streaming. So if I can help you with any of that stuff, please let me know. We're kind of in an upgrade mode for VidBlaster these days because VidBlaster released version 4 2 weeks ago. It's still in beta. But a lot of folks have been waiting for features that are in version 4, and version 4 is very usable. I mean, there's some parts of it that are still a little rough around the edges, but version 4 is very usable, and we're going to talk about some of that in just a minute. One of the features in version 4 of VidBlaster that I think is really cool and we were having fun with earlier in our first segment, the show That VidBlaster Guy, is things like the lower thirds here and here are PNG files, and they reside in VidBlaster in the overlay module, and in vMix, which we're running vMix right now, they are in an input module as an image. And in both vMix and VidBlaster now, the file can be changed on the fly. So if you happen to have somebody, in fact, this little file right here, this graphic right here is just separate. It's separate from this lower third right here. And this graphic file actually resides in a Dropbox. That's where vMix expects to see it. And so if you let somebody have access to your Dropbox, you could be in big trouble because they can change your file dynamically right during the middle of your show, and you will never notice it until you see that the file has changed. Now, we were doing it earlier in the VidBlaster Guy show, and my good friend Martin Kay from Zen Video in Manchester, England, who is a great supporter of the show and appreciate him a whole lot, was I sort of sprung it on him at the last minute, and so he was modifying this file. And all of a sudden, during the middle of the show, it would change. And it started out with this little file right here by itself, and then he put in a graphic up here, and then at one point he had sun rays coming out from my head. It was crazy. I was hoping he wasn't going to do a baby's bonnet, and he didn't, so that was good. So if you see some things change here or around here, we can blame that on Martin, because vMix and VidBlaster monitor the PNG files to see if they've changed. So you think about that for a second. If you're doing sports, that means you can take scores dynamically from somebody else. Or heck, if you're a one-man show and you're trying to broadcast and do the show, but you've got somebody at home that's watching the show that has access to your Dropbox, they can do all your graphics for you. Isn't that the coolest thing? You can put your graphics in a Dropbox, and if they want to update statistics at halftime so that all your halftime statistics are up to date, you don't have to have a statistician there in the press box with you. You can have somebody at home in their underwear that's keeping stats on the game and changing the PNG file that you guys have agreed to in advance. That he changes it, and it's sitting there in your graphics box waiting to change. Or he can do your live score. Or think about it. It could be let's say it's a baseball game. And in baseball, you've got a lot of numbers that change. You've got strikes and balls. You've got outs. You can even, if you've got the little graphics, you can do the runners on the bases like ESPN does. All those things could be dynamically done, could be done live, remotely, across town, across the country, in another country. I mean, Martin is in England right now, and there we go. And instantly he has given us a new graphic. Look at this. Oh my goodness. Oh my word. I don't believe it. And everything is spelled right. I love it. I love it. And as soon as he uploaded that to my Dropbox, vMix is constantly scanning the graphic file, and VidBlaster the same way. And so Martin, what he's done is he's covered up my lower third, and he's given me a whole new one. Martin, thank you. Wow. That's Martin K, Zen Video in Manchester, England. If you're in England and you're looking for somebody to do work with you on streaming PCs or anything to do with video, we need to have Martin come on and tell us more about what he does. But I think it's zenvideo.uk. Well, Martin, if you'll post your URL in chat, I'll make sure that we give you a plug here on the show, because I don't want to give you the wrong information and then have to correct it later. So, but here's the concept. You can have an assistant who is drinking tea after dinner in England while you're doing an afternoon show in Alabama, USA, and they, if they have access to your Dropbox, they can dynamically change. They can change your whole show. Now, you have to trust this person explicitly. You have to really trust that they're not going to make a fool out of you. Now, here in this show, that's an exception, because I do that all by myself. I mean, that's the whole idea. That's kind of the tagline for this show. Streaming Idiots, we make all the mistakes so that you don't have to. So that we're showing you how this can be done live with a friend. And somebody in the chat room says, why post the URL in the chat? Martin, paste it all over the screen. That's right. He could do that. Martin, that would be great. There it is, right there, from zenvideo.co.uk, and it updated immediately. Martin is just, that's just too much. Too much. This is too much fun. Oh my goodness. Isn't this awesome? I mean, my mind is just exploding right now with all the possibilities for this little tool. Now, let's say that you're using VidBlaster, and you want to post tweets from your Twitter feed. You know, somebody's done @VidBlaster Guy and has tweeted that, and so we want to pop that tweet in. If you've got an assistant, they can just basically, they can take a screenshot of the tweet, they can cut and paste the text from the tweet, and then suddenly, if you've got a tweet box right there as a lower third, they can pop it right in. And you've got, you know, whatever social media you want, whatever messages you want can be popped right in automatically and easily. And it doesn't have to be messages. Now Martin has given me back control of the show. Thank you, Martin. And what he did was basically he reverted back to the original graphic, which is this one right here. And so that all the rest of the stuff was covered up. I do want to give, while I'm thinking about it, I do want to give a hat tip to my good friend Dr. Charles Campbell in South Carolina, and thank him again for the lovely backdrop that we've got back here. Charles, thank you. I enjoy this every week. It really is a treat. You know, we got folks in the chat room. That's great. It really is amazing. And so let's say that you've got 3 assistants, and you know, one of them's in New England, and one of them's in Mexico, and one of them's in Australia, and each one of them has got access to a different part of your Dropbox, and we'll use Dropbox as a good example. So you've set up some subdirectories in your Dropbox, and each one has got access to that. And one of them's doing the stats for your baseball game. One of them's keeping up with your ball and strike count. And another one is doing a let's say they're doing a picture-in-picture right up here that has your advertisers. And so they are dynamically changing your advertisers throughout the course of your show. I think the possibilities are really limitless. And somebody out there is going to come up with a great way to automate that so that you've got a feed that's coming in that's, almost like a playlist of PNG files that are just being rotated in. The possibilities on that one are too much. Somebody says in the chat room said if it was Australia, it would be cricket. It wouldn't be baseball. Well, that's probably true in England too. It would be cricket, a game I have yet to understand. Also, in the pre-show, we were having a great discussion about the process of recording and streaming. Currently, the way this show is being done right now, we're producing this show, adding all the graphics, doing the green screen in vMix 15. And vMix 15 is outputting the video as what they call their external output. And Wirecast is picking that up as if it were a camera, and then Wirecast is picking up the audio from my mixer. And so between those two, that's the show. And Wirecast is streaming that to two different servers. One is a server in Kansas City, Kansas, USA, and the other is a server in Washington, D.C., USA. The Washington, D.C. server is my 720p flash feed, and the Kansas City server is my 180. I think it's 180. It might be 144, but it's advertised as 180. My 180p HTML5 feed for iOS. And that is two separate resolutions, two separate bit rates. And so Wirecast handles that. Wirecast handles that pretty nicely. It's all kind of wrapped up in one what would you call it? I'm not a programmer. So anyway, one window you can go to make all the selections and to program that. And I click one button on Wirecast, and Wirecast broadcasts both of those feeds simultaneously. The updates to VidBlaster 4, to its streamer module and to its recorder module have greatly decreased the amount of CPU that those two modules use to do their job. And one of the next tests that I want to run on VidBlaster is to see if we can use VidBlaster as a encoding, streaming, and recording utility and not use any other capabilities on VidBlaster, but just to have it stream to two different locations, two different resolutions, two different bit rates, and to record the higher resolution and to see how that does in terms of CPU. The whole idea is that you want to be able to do as much as possible on the least expensive hardware possible. And the better this stuff gets, it's kind of funny in a way. In some ways, the less and less hardware it needs, but in other ways, they're getting more and more features. So what is given is also taken away in terms of CPU. Today we're using a quad core. I think it's a first generation or second generation i7 2600K, slightly overclocked. And then we're running vMix 15 to output to Wirecast. I think this one is 4. vMix and VidBlaster are using FFMPEG as kind of the engine, the encoding engine behind the scenes to record and to stream. And actually I'd like to test both of those guys kind of side to side and see if you've ever had a look at FFmpeg. It's a command line format encoder, which means you basically get into your old DOS command line and you're using slash commands to identify what you want FFmpeg to do for you. Now there's some front ends that kind of put a graphical interface on that, but both VidBlaster and vMix basically take whatever input you give it and they put that into the right command lines for FFmpeg to interpret, to stream and record. So it just depends on how Martin Sinclair with vMix and Mike Versteeg with VidBlaster, how well they understand FFmpeg and how many options they're going to give you to give their software in order to give FFmpeg to stream and or record. So it's going to be interesting to test that. Yeah, here's Andrew from Australia. Says vMix uses the same underlying encoder as VidBlaster, so you can do the test with both of them, and that will be interesting. And really, since they're using the same engine, it'll be kind of a question as to how they have tuned that engine, which one was able to tune it best, and what's best for one situation may not be best for another situation. The situation that I'm using Wirecast in is, again, we're streaming 2 different locations, 2 different streams, 2 different resolutions, and then recording the higher of the 2. In VidBlaster, we would actually use 2 streamer modules and a recorder module. Now, you can't use multiple streamer modules in any edition of VidBlaster. I believe it's limited to the broadcast edition, which is the top package. And Wirecast, I don't think Wirecast is limited. Not sure about vMix yet. I would have to see how versatile the streamer, or actually the stream function is in vMix to tell you about that. So that'll be an interesting test. And that kind of brings me to the next section here of the show. Last week we talked about coming up this summer, putting together a shootout, a summer shootout between the big 3, vMix, Wirecast, and VidBlaster. And I think the whole concept of streaming and the whole concept of recording are definitely parts of the shootout that we want to say, how well can you do it, number 1? How much hardware support do you need to do, number 2? Do you need a big i7 Extreme 8-core processor to do it? Do you need a special graphics card in order to make it work? What are the specs to make it optimum? And then based on common criteria, what can you do? How good is it going to look? I'm beginning to, I'm thinking through this whole process, and I've had some great feedback from some of you watching the show live and on YouTube as to how that should look. In fact, one person said, "Oh, you don't do a shootout. Don't do a shootout." Oh, come on, shootouts are fun. Let's put all 3 softwares kind of under the spotlight and see how they do, and see which ones look really good. Now, what we're going to find out, I can tell you already. I can tell you what the result is going to be. I can't tell you specifically, but I can tell you generally. Generally, it's going to be that some softwares do really good with this. Some softwares do really good with that. Other softwares do really good with the middle stuff. So it's going to kind of be you can pays your money and takes your pick, as they say down here in the South. Today, we've been using all 3. Our show earlier, that VidBlaster Guy, we broadcast, we did the live production portion of it with VidBlaster, did Wirecast on the streaming, switched over in the intermission to vMix with Wirecast on the streaming. So it's going to be fun to play with some of those in the future and see how well they play together. I'm interested to see how VidBlaster plays with vMix as a streamer recorder utility. And some of this is an exercise just to see if it's capable. It may not be the best way to do something, but there are a lot of times when there's the best way. I'm thinking about, okay, I've got a woodworking project going on in my garage right now, and I know there's the best way to do what I want to do, but there's also the way to do it with the tools that I already have on hand that don't require me to go out and buy a new tool or learn a new skill. And so it may not be the best way, but it's the way that I can do it now because I've got the tools on hand. Some days I live in the ideal world, but most of the time I live in the real world. And in the real world, we don't have unlimited budgets. We can't go out and buy everything we need every time we need it. We have to make wise decisions, and we have to learn how to use our tools to be able to get the most out of them. So I'm thinking, okay, with this shootout, let's find out some more about our tools, what they will do, what they won't do, or what they will do really, really well, and what they will do good. Is that the right way to say it? What they'll do well and what they'll do really well. How about that? And what they do sorta and what they do poorly. And in finding all this out, we might spur the developers of some of the softwares to add new features or to upgrade old features, or to simply come in and correct me and say, Tom, if you'd used my software properly, it would have done what you wanted it to do. So that's the summer shootout. If you would like to be a part of it, if you'd like to have some input into the tests that we run, shoot me an email, tom@streamingidiots.com. If you'd like to come and represent one of those softwares, if you think you're good enough to do it, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to be the moderator, so at least I think I am. Let's put it that way. So if you'd like to represent one of the softwares, there's a big prize in it. Oh yeah, there's a big prize for you, if you believe that one. But no, it might be fun. And if you represent a company, we'll certainly bring that to the table, and hopefully that you don't embarrass your company. That may keep a bunch of folks away right now. Getting a question out of the chat room. Do you use the same PC to record as well as stream, or stream on a different PC? That's a great question. When we started this whole streaming project 3 years ago next month, it was in July of 2012, we started that VidBlaster Guy. And part of the concept of the show was that one guy with one PC could do one awesome broadcast. And that was a little bit of a reaction to what I saw going on in kind of the streaming world. And that there were guys out there, guys that I respect a lot, like Andrew Zarian and Stephen Haywood and Amnon Nissan, who are doing a lot of streaming shows, and who, because they do a lot of streaming shows, decide they want to use multiple PCs. They want to use, a PC for Skype, and a PC for streaming, and a PC for production. And before you know it, they got 2 or 3 or 4 or more PCs operating at the same time. When I say PCs, I also will include, Macs and laptops and other things that fall into that category. And so suddenly you end up with a very complex and complicated, 2 different words, 2 different meanings, very complex and complicated production, which if it breaks, you doggone well better know it well, because you're going to have a bear of a time troubleshooting it. So my thought was, okay, you guys do your thing, and you're going to do it well, and I'm cheering you on from the sidelines. But I think there's also another way, which is let's do it simple, because simple doesn't break very easily, and when it breaks, it's pretty easy to figure out where it breaks. So let's do it all on one PC. It's got to be a pretty strong PC. It can't be an i5. It's going to have to be an i7. You're going to have to find the right software that makes the best use of that PC. That's one of the reasons why we went to Wirecast as our streamer encoder, because Wirecast is so doggone efficient in the way that it encodes for streaming and recording. I'm getting corrected in the chat room about the definition of a PC. That's okay. I'm a big boy. Let's see. It says PC stands for personal computer. For some reason, we got caught up with the separate by saying PCs for Windows and Mac for Apple. Well, that's true. And when people tell me PC, I'm thinking I'm thinking Windows automatically. And that's because the softwares that I use the most, every computer in my house is a Windows computer. My wife's got an iPhone, but I don't do iPhone. Anyway, we got way off track there. So the idea was that what we're doing here, both this show right now, Streaming Idiots, and that VidBlaster Guy, are one-man, one-PC shows. Because that's the way most of the world is. Most of the world doesn't have the capability to have a bunch of different PCs. Certainly not a bunch of different PCs dedicated for streaming only. Here in this studio, fortunately, I've got the room to have a room that I don't have to set up and tear down every time I want to make a show, so I can leave things set up. But we've got one PC. I'm in the process, and this segues nicely, of building a new PC. And I'm not sure whether this is going to be a supplemental PC, and so I'll end up with two PCs, so I'll have to change my slogan from one guy, two PCs, three awesome broadcasts, or something like that. But I needed a test bed for a video card that the good folks at AJA sent me, the AJA Kona 4, which looks like it's really cool, but it wouldn't fit in my production PC, and I'm a little hesitant to start tinkering around with my production PC because everything's working so beautifully. So I thought, well, I've got an extra PC here. And it was a real small one, didn't have enough room on the motherboard for another card. And AJA wants a certain type of video card in the PC. And I've been wanting that video card anyway. So I sprung for the video card, had motherboard and all the other peripherals, power supplies and RAM and that stuff on hand. And so I've purchased an inexpensive tower case that's got lots of room in it. So we will put it all together. And perhaps in the next week or two, we'll be bringing the show to you through that PC, or at very least demoing it. Because I want to show you what the Kona card does. The folks at AJA also sent me some mini converters. So we'll be hooking up probably 3 high-def cams here in the studio. We'll put them on our tally lights from tally-lights.com, from Ted at Tally Lights, so that I can tell which camera I need to look at. I mean, I'm switching cameras. You'd think I'd know, but nothing like having a tally light there to be able to tell you. So we'll have 3 different cams, probably one head-on, maybe one that'll give me a full studio shot for our pre-show and intermission times when you guys can kind of see what's going on, and then maybe another cam I can switch to off on the side that'll have a different background on it or something like that. We haven't figured all that out yet, but that'll be fun. So thanks to Eric Norell at AJA for making this possible, and promise we're going to get this card back to you real soon, because otherwise they're going to send me a bill for it, I think. Anyway. And another comment from Andy in the chat room says, the programs were created just for that as well. I think it came from the TriCaster ability. Yeah, one guy, one TriCaster, one great broadcast. But the one guy was, $20,000 lighter in his wallet a couple of years ago if he was buying a TriCaster. Nowadays you can get one for, $5,000, but then still you want to buy extra toys to go with it. So you're up to the, 8 or 10 by the time you're done. I'm thinking that you can do it, in your back room with not with your grandma's old Dell, but with a pretty stout PC, one that you could probably pick up at a Best Buy, or buy online, or certainly build yourself. If it's more of a professional environment, then you're probably going to want something that's a little bit more designed just for the job. For example, the production PC here in my studio, this guy is stripped. It's like a NASCAR race car in the sense that it doesn't have a radio, it doesn't have a heater, it doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have virus protection, it doesn't have lots of stuff on it. I don't even want Windows to update Windows Defender. I don't want anything running in the background because I want every CPU cycle I can possibly get out of this rascal. I don't want anybody stealing my CPU cycles. I want it all available. So it's a single-purpose, single-duty machine. If you're interested in something like that and would like my help designing it, putting it together, we can certainly do that. Somebody's saying in the chat that they use a Core 2 Duo and it worked great. And yeah, I can remember in the bad old days streaming soccer matches with a Dell Core 2 Duo. And, I think we were streaming, oh golly, we were probably streaming 320 by 240, 30 frames a second, or maybe even a little fewer frames a second, because that's all we could get the Dell to do. And, of course, we only had 300 kbps uplink speed from the press box, because that's all we could get in there was a DSL line. Those were the bad old days. I think I've covered everything that we wanted to cover today, plus some. So again, hat tip to Martin K, Zen Video in Manchester, England, for helping us with the graphics earlier today. And and as we say, he was just sitting there waiting. I mean, it was that quick. It was that quick. All right, Martin, here we're going to do a little experiment here. And I'm going to give you a second. And Martin's like, Tom, you got to give me more. You got to give me more lead time on this stuff. You can't start talking about it during the middle of the show. Oh, there's his URL right there in the side. That's not my URL, so it's over on the side, and that's zenvideo.co.uk. Martin, I would like you on my count to change back. And I love this one. I'm not saying it for that reason, but I just want to see what kind of timing we've got, what kind of latency we've got here, to change back to any other style of graphic that you want. And I'm thinking, it'd be the kind of thing that I can count to 3, and at 3 you would, then upload something to Dropbox, which would then upload it to my Dropbox, which would then appear here, and we can kind of count and see what the delay is. And this is, quick and dirty, not anything perfect. So, Martin, if you can in chat say that would be agreeable, and tell me how much time I need to give you to get something else prepared, that might be fun to sort of close out the show with something like that. And while we wait for Martin to respond, Martin says, okay, do it now. Well, that's great. Okay, here we go. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So for 4 seconds. 4 seconds. From the time Martin said go in Manchester, England, until the time it appeared here was 4 seconds. And he did it on 3, and it changed over here on 7. So that's pretty nifty. And we're not talking about audio video sync where 4 seconds would be outrageous. And actually, I'll tell you, there's probably a 3-second delay between the time Martin hears me and the time, or between the time I say it and the time he hears me. Yeah, Jim's saying in the chat right now, actually the delay may not have been in Dropbox. It may have been the feed delay. I haven't checked today what the feed delay is. Generally, I check that in pre-show because we count down the time, and so I'll check and see how much delay is there in the flash feed. And the flash feed is generally only anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds. And the iOS feed, the HTML5 feed, is generally 45 seconds to a minute, which is why we don't use that for our main feed. It's just it means that the chat room is just always a minute behind, and that's no fun. So, Jim, I think you're right on the mark with that one. And it probably is less than 4 seconds. It's probably closer to a second. So if you've got somebody that's trying to anticipate I guess, you figured 4 or 5 seconds. 4 or 5 seconds, not bad. That's not bad. Not bad. All right, folks. Well, I think that brings us about to the end of our time. I really do appreciate you taking time out to watch today live, those of you that are watching us live, and hanging around to the very end. And those of you that are watched us on YouTube, we hope you'll subscribe and keep an eye out for our summer software shootout and updates on our PC build coming up. And then, of course, the testing that we're going to do with VidBlaster 4 as a streaming and recording appliance. How about that? Could be a box that we build that's just a streaming box. So, been a treat to be with you today. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a Wednesday afternoon without hanging out with you guys. It's been my pleasure. I'm Tom Sinclair, that streaming idiot guy. See you next time.